A lot of important questions have been asked. I guess one of the things I want to get clear is the GAO report focused on a lot of things. One of the things that was of concern to me is that, you know, the whole purpose of these preferences is to try and to help out the specific demographic that we're trying to help out. And one of the things the GAO highlighted that I think raises an additional concern, in addition to the fact that we're not meeting the threshold, is that the percent that are supposedly being helped oftentimes are a front man, if you will, or a front lady, for basically garnering that set aside only for the money, the business, the contract to then be handed off to or subcontracted to much larger entities. So I guess my question is, we rely right now, or the way the rules are written, are that we rely on other small businesses to cry foul, other small businesses to somehow know about the unfairness of those practices to report. And I guess my question would be, perhaps the agencies themselves who are awarding the contracts to these small business set-aside preferences should be the ones to follow up and verify that, in fact, it's small business people who are doing the work. Because your agencies are the ones who know what work is to be provided. Your agencies, your folks letting the contracts and awarding the contracts are the ones who have the relationship with the small business. So doesn't it make sense that your agency then verify that, in fact, the work is all being done by these set-aside contractors, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to award the contract, close our eyes, and not open until somebody screams foul? I mean, as a small business person myself, I will tell you that unless I catch wind of it somehow, I don't know when another small business person in my community gets awarded one of these contracts. And so if they go out and they're basically a shill and sub it out to a bunch of large corporations, I'm not going to know, first of all, that it happened, and second of all, who to contact with your within your agency to let you know that there's a problem and that that they're skating the system. So the point is, the question is, why don't you within your respective agencies take it upon yourself to be responsible for policing these efforts? Any of you, all of you.
I'll give a little bit of a shot here. We call that process fraud, and the process fraud is one of the harder ones to catch because, as you noted, it's after contract award. It's post-award. The contractor promises up front, here are the deliverables, here's how I'm going to do it. You actually do pre-awards, and you actually do post-awards when you're talking to the contractor. What am I going to get? And remember, you have this that you've promised that you're going to do so much. It's called the subcontracting limitation, and the contractor doesn't live up to it. But they don't tell you that. And if they did, the show would be over right then. I'm sorry, we're going to have to pull this award back and resolicit. But that doesn't happen. Generally, the business will say, and this is, again, it's a hard one to catch because it's after award. And you have, how many contracting officers do you have? Where are the businesses located? And how do you trace it down? I'm not making excuses for them, but it would cost a lot to really police that. And the more that I have learned from this last 6 months here in my job, I look back, it could be a hub zone problem, it can be a small business problem, it can be a women-owned business, it can be an 8A problem. As a matter of fact, the first time it came to me in my career, it was an 8A problem. It wasn't even the 8A company was shipping the products. And the only reason we found out about it, the 8A stopped paying the subcontractor, and he complained to us. And that's when I worked for DOD. It was a Defense Construction Supply Agency issue. That has happened, and I guess it's, to me, is probably the dirty, lingering area. How do you catch it all? And we have 40 people, but my people are physically in D.C. What you need to do is have some sort of a centralized process where we can go out and verify small businesses. Where are they? If they do progress payments, it's fairly easy, by the way. I used to be a price analyst. And then you can really challenge it because you go to the engineer. They will tell you how much is done, where it is, and who's doing what. But if it falls out of that realm, It's tough. I probably left more questions.
Well, no,
than
like, I
answers.
guess I'd ask two follow-ups, and any of you can answer this. First is, beyond them guaranteeing the deliverables that they're signing up for, that you're awarding them for, specifically, what do you have in that contract that then they're, in addition to signing that they're going to be deliverables, but they're also signing that they, in fact, are going to be the ones producing the product?
It's called the Subcontract Limitation Clause, and that clause requires any small business preference program that they have to do 50% construction. There are two types of construction. It's either they have to do 15% or 25%. All other programs are 50% or more. The uniqueness to service disabled veterans, they can make that subcontracting limitation working with other veterans. So if two veterans get together, one's a sub, one's a prime, and they do over 50% of the effort, that's legal. That is also true of the Hub Zone program. A Hub Zone or any other Hub Zone program. The rest of the government, that firm has to do that percentage.
Okay, my second question would be, each agency is different. I know one of the concerns with the Department of Defense I always hear is, a lot of our products that we need manufactured, small businesses themselves can't produce. They don't have the capital. That they're just what we need. Small businesses by nature, can't produce in volume. Mm-hmm. Aside from being a veteran, aside from being one of these demographic qualities, mm-hmm. That then qualify you to apply for that set-aside contract, what do your respective agencies do to verify that, in fact, it's a company who can produce the product that they say they are competing for? In other words, if I am a woman, or I am a minority, or I am a veteran, and I can show proof that I am a X-owned company by virtue of me filling that category, and I say that I produce weapons, or I produce whatever the deliverable is for the federal government, beyond showing proof that I am the owner and therefore qualified to compete for the contract, what do you do to verify that, in fact, they build a product, that the product is actually of the quality of your respective agency? And I would think through whatever process that is, you'd verify that, in fact, they can produce it in-house and that they're not a shell corporation and, simply a front person with nothing more than a P.O. box or a 1,000-square-foot office competing for federal contracts.
Usually what happens, at least when I was in the field, which is many, many years ago, over 30 years ago now, we used to have DCMA, Defense Contract Management Agency, and I worked for that agency. And part of my job was to post-award reviews and pre-awards. During the pre-award phase, you judge the financial capability, the engineering capability, the manufacturing capability, the equipment, the site, transportation and shipping of the products. You would look at all parts, and you would go back and adjust, and you would get together as a group and either accept or deny that firm is the right firm when you do a pre-award. Over the years, they have moved away from doing pre-awards. They made it very limited as the years have gone on. So I don't know that that's being done now, but that was one way that you could handle it. The other issue is in the post-award. DCMA and I would get involved in that, where you would go out and sit down and talk to the contractor after they received award. You would again go through the clauses so that they understand it's an educational issue. It's a communication issue, and we have to do that. I don't know so much. It's been like 30-plus years now that I've been out of that organization, but that was one of the ways that I felt very comfortable about what we were doing.
And if I could build on that, Congressman, I think going back to Chairman Nye's point about this is about outcomes. We need to hit these goals, and we need to do so absent fraud, waste, and abuse. I would divide it into three sections. One is, do we have these right policies and procedures when you're looking at determinations of responsibility and doing your market research, and during the contract operation, is the contracting officer appropriate looking at subcontracting plans and subcontracting performance? Then in the second phase, it's training, and I spoke a little bit about the President's Small Business Contracting Task Force that he's set up, which has to deliver recommendations to him late next month. I chair one of the 5 working groups of that, and it's on workforce training and agency accountability. And one of the big things that we're trying to push is closing any awareness gap on the contracting officer front to make sure that they, not only do we have the right policies and procedures in place, but they know what those are. And then the third thing I would say is you mentioned these preferences are aimed at helping these specific groups, and we're not meeting the thresholds. To that, I would only implore you that one of the key things that we can do overall to help service disabled veterans is ensuring parity between all of these different programs and replacing that shall in the hub zone language with may, so that we get the contracts, the contracting officers don't, during this training, become confused as to what they can or cannot do.
Anyone else?
That's except for VA. We like to have the program we have. We want to continue with 109, 461. Thank you.
Well, to that point, when I spoke with the SBA administrator, my first point to her was, I think it makes sense. I mean, my first question was, why don't we make them all shall as opposed to all may? But apparently, legally, then you'd have to qualify for every one of them, which would be kind of difficult. But my point to her was, look, we're failing. We're failing on all of them. And so what are you doing to make it so that we're not failing on all of them? And her point to me was that, in her opinion, it was a lot to do with leadership, that it takes the agency heads as high up as the secretary in each one of these departments to say, you know what, it's going to be a mission. It's a directive of mine to the folks letting these contracts that we're going to meet these goals and people are going to be held accountable for it. Right. So I guess my question very quickly to all of you would be, have you to this date heard from any of your respective heads? Has Secretary Gates ever mentioned the set-asides and the need to meet those goals as specified by Congress, really? I'm sure Shinseki wants the veteran set-aside met. But, I mean, I'm curious, because I think the leadership of each respective agency is very key to what the goals are. And I know even within our organizations, if we say, well, this is kind of a goal, but if we don't meet it, gee, you all tried, too bad, so sad, we'll do it again next year. But if it's, this is a key goal, and if we don't meet it, there's going to be consequences, I think you have a different outcome. And I'm just curious what directives and what message you've heard, if anything, from your respective heads about meeting those set-aside goals.
I would need to go back and get the specific letters, but our leadership has put a great deal of emphasis on service-disabled veteran-owned small business achievements. The Secretary has discussed it. Let's see, is it Dr. Carter, I think, has signed out a letter. That our leadership really is behind. It's just behind achieving.
How long have you been at the Secretary at the Defense Department?
In a small business, working with small business issues?
Yeah.
11 years.
Okay.
12 years.
So you've been there under several
I have.
Secretary of Defenses.
Yes.
Is the directive any different now than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yes. Let's see. It's not a directive, meaning a directive has a specific.
I guess my question is that on the part of us policymakers,
yes,
who are responsible to our electorate, should we be able to tell our electorate and the folks that we're claiming we're helping that we should expect any different outcome this year as opposed to 5 years ago, as opposed to 10 years ago, based on the leadership of your respective department?
There has been a difference. It's in my testimony.
Okay, but we're still not meeting.
Just like think about the size of the Department of Defense. I mean, I think it's fantastic that since we got a tool where we could make progress, that the progress has gone in the direction it has. It's been 7 years.
Do you think that the 3% set aside is too high?
I think for the Department of Defense, given our product mix, it's a challenge, but I think it's one we can meet. I think we have to think every single year of another way to find the less low-hanging fruit. And we keep working at it. I think we'll make it.
How about the other agencies? I'm curious.
Yeah, Secretary Napolitano, as well as our Administrator Fugate, have made it a priority for us to provide opportunities for all small businesses, including disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So we're doing good. Our goals are high. We exceed at FEMA the 23%. We're at about 32%, and they continue to move up our goals. And our trend is really good over the last few years.
At EPA, Administrator Jackson has made it very clear that she's very supportive of the program. She had a conversation with me when she first came and said, I want these numbers to go up on my watch and not down. We think we do have a good story at EPA when you look at our numbers. Small business numbers we hit about over 40% for small. Service disabled veteran owned last year in FY 2009, 8.93% was what we accomplished. We're on track now. As of the third quarter, we're at 5.6%, and we don't see that going down. We anticipate that we will exceed the 3%. And so Administrator Jackson I report to the Deputy Administrator. I sit in the senior staff. She's made it very clear. She asked during senior staff, Jeanette, what's my small business numbers looking like? And she has signed a memo out to the agency saying that the administration, and she is supportive of the small business program and want to continue the success. We have incentive programs where we recognize our regions. We give out Crystal Duck Award, and it's very competitive within the agency amongst the program offices in the regions competing for that recognition for our small business program as a whole.
We in VA, actually, I have the pleasure of really working closely with Secretary Shinseki, and he is very committed not only to the service disabled or the veteran business goals, but to the SDB goal, to the hub zone goal. And he personally signs out those goal letters. So I have with me a copy of the goal letter that he signed out, and I think if given his druthers, he'd probably rather push them up, but I will have to say, sometimes the staff says, wait a second, you're going too aggressive. But we have aggressive goals. Yeah, we've done some things. This year to date, we're at 18.4% with service disabled. With veterans, we're at 21% of our total spend as of the 10 months. With hub zones, this is where we fall behind. We're at 2%. Of course, we're only trying to get to 3, but we're not just trying to get to 3. We're trying to blow past those goals. Those are minimums. They're not where we should go. In terms of small business, we're at 35.4% right now. So we're at this is the highest level, except for, I think, in the year 2008, we did finish at 36% for small business. So, I mean, we're committed. I think the management team is committed. I've never been in so many what they call ELBs, Executive Leadership Board meetings, where we talk to each other about where we're going and how we're going to get there and what are the problems. And it's not one you can just sit there and listen to. They go around a room and you have to speak on your issues. What are your problems and what are your fixes?
Well, I think based on your own testimony and numbers, you represent some of our better performing agencies, and perhaps we'll have to have a hearing in the future with some of those that aren't meeting the goal that are bringing down our average. So I appreciate you answering the questions, and with that, I'd yield back.